Good evening and welcome to the Board of Directors meeting for May 16th, 2017. I'd like to welcome everyone that's with us here in City Hall tonight as we go about conducting the city's business. Madam Clerk, if you would please read the roll.
Director Hendricks, Director Richardson, Director Peck, Director Hines, Director Wright, Director Wyrick, Director Campuris, Director Fortson, Director Adcock, Vice Mayor Webb, Mayor Stola.
Here. Let me call on City Director Gene Fortune for our invocation, please.
Would you join me in prayer? Our God, we thank you for the opportunity to meet and make decisions in the spirit of a free country. We thank you for the blessings we've received in our city. We would ask your protection and guidance over our first responders, over the men and women who are protecting the citizens of this city. We would ask your guidance tonight as we make decisions for the good of this city. All of these things we ask in your name. Amen.
Amen. If you would, please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have some modifications for the agenda to deal with first. So, Mr. Moore, you're proposing that we add M1 to the consent agenda, is that right?
That's correct, Mayor.
Okay, is there a motion? Second. There's a motion and a second to add the M1 resolution to the consent agenda. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. It will be added. We also have an ordinance, the ordinance number 4 that is on your printed agenda. The manager has asked that this be deferred till June 6th.
So move.
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. As you know, board members, I wrote to you yesterday and circulated a resolution dealing with our school district. I would like to put this on the normal course of putting it on our agenda for the June, it'd be the first meeting in June. I talked with Superintendent Mike Poore, who wishes to be in attendance and to speak, and so in deference to that, I would like to go ahead and just take care of this in the normal course of our normal business, which would be to submit this now and have it on our June 6th agenda. So I'll hand you out an extra copy so that you each have one.
Yeah, could you turn my?
Go ahead. Go ahead, Director Hendricks.
My question, I think in the paper was that some members put this ordinance or whatever it is, resolution together. Could those people identify themselves?
Say that again.
The subject that you just spoke about, you're putting something on for the 6th. It has to do with the school board.
That's correct, yes.
And in the article, the word is that members of this board put that together.
No, I don't know what the newspaper said, but that's obviously not correct.
Okay, so this is a solely thing of your part?
I have worked with the city attorney on the drafting of it, yes.
The reason why I ask is that I brought a folder, that's all.
All right, very good. Thank you, Director
I brought
Hendricks.
this.
Director Campuris, you're recognized, please.
Mayor, I'd like to suggest that we table ordinance number 8, and let me explain my thought process. We have gone through a very divisive time with the schools, and our community is very divided, and there are lots of strong emotions. And this issue has the potential, if judging by my phone calls, of being equally as divisive. And on one side, there's a group of people who I understand want to make sure that we take care of the least of us. And there's another group of people who feel like that their rights are being infringed upon and the safety and vitality of the community. Both are valid points, and universally, what people have told me is they have a way of solving this issue and of resolving this issue. So Director Webb and I have talked about this, and I would like to table this issue for 8 weeks. And during this period of time, Director Webb will give you our suggestion on a committee of citizens that would look into this issue and bring back a suggestion within 45 days. If in fact it is something that we all like, that's fine. If not, the issue's back on the table in 8 weeks, and we can vote it up or down based on what we have here today. So that's my thought process. Director Webb and I have talked about this. I'd love for her to elaborate on how we go from here. Kathy?
Is that a motion?
Yes.
There's a motion and a second. Mr. Carpenter, I don't believe a motion to table is ripe for discussion. Is that correct?
Well, actually, it can be debated. It usually isn't. It takes a two-thirds
Tom,
vote
turn your mic on. I can't hear you. Speak in it.
until Jane Dickey corrected me. A motion to table is a debatable motion. It takes a two-thirds vote.
You have to speak up, Mr. Carpenter. People can't hear you.
A motion to table is a debatable motion, but it will take a two-thirds vote under Robert's rules.
The table.
Right.
All right, very good. All right, so does anybody wish to discuss the motion to table? Mr. Richardson, you're recognized.
Yes, Mayor, thanks for acknowledging me. Mayor, before we take this vote, it's never been made clear to me what's the impetus for us moving forward with this, and I feel kind of just confused or Lance flummoxed in terms of why we're even addressing this issue, and never been made clear to me what the problem is. Considering the fact that a number of people get their pleasure and their thrill in helping the least of these, not making $100,000 a year, getting the biggest house. I don't understand. That made clear to me why it's an issue that's been brought to us in the first place. So before we discuss that, the motion, Dean, I'd like to know somebody up here to tell me what is the problem.
Well, the motion before us is a motion to table. So you either are speaking in favor of tabling it or against tabling it.
I'm speaking against it.
All right. Does anybody else wish to speak for or against the motion to table? Director Hendricks, you're recognized, please. Up. If you'll hit your light again, sorry.
My concern about the motion is we did a poor job in deciding going to the polls to vote on this issue, not the school, but the tax. It's related. And I don't think that, I know I'm not going to be voting on whatever you put before this place. I'm going to get out in the community and work for it. So I just think that, why are we voting? There are things that we should be voting on that we don't vote on. So don't think for 1 minute that I'm going to vote for it.
Vice Mayor Webb, you're recognized, please.
Yes, and I am speaking in favor of tabling this motion. As you know, I was not here last week. I spend every day out in the community trying to figure out how to feed people. And I would like to table this motion and offer something that's not a substitute motion, but something that I think would be an alternative that would probably negate us ever having to do this resolution, hopefully ever. And if you want me to explain that now, is it? But I would think because that would not be appropriate until after we have the vote. What's the?
And Mayor, I think Director Hendricks thought we were talking about the school.
I understand.
So I think that was a confusion on our part
understand.
in terms of what she was speaking to.
It's been suggested by Director Campiris and by Vice Mayor Webb that in 8 weeks, there'll be a group put together to discuss this and to try and come up with suggestions that are going to hopefully receive a consensus of approval from the people who are interested in this matter. And it concerns a lot of people who are in this room and people who are not in this room. So I think that probably is a wise thing to do, rather than to sit here and have argument about it, when in fact there will likely be some substantive changes. So I think we can go ahead and ask for a vote on the motion to table, unless somebody else wishes to speak about the motion to table. Director Adcock.
Mayor, I think Director Campiris, when he made his presentation on this, I think that Kathy was to make the second part of the presentation, and I would like to hear her portion of it before we vote.
On the motion to table? All right, I'll recognize Vice Mayor Webb to elaborate on that issue.
Thank you, Mayor. There are people who, with the city and people with the various members of the Homeless Coalition, have been to several different cities in the last few months. I've been to Austin and looked at some of the programs. We all know that there's not a one-size-fits-all program that we can do, but we also know that there are best practices in other cities that we can try to replicate here, that we can replicate here. And so rather than dealing with this vote tonight, I talked to some of the folks from different stakeholders, if you will, and asked what they thought about this idea, and it would be to spend about 45 days doing research on best practices and to work together to come up with a solution that they would present to the board, and it would be a group facilitated by Assistant City Manager James Jones, with representative from the Interfaith Alliance, the two representatives from the Homeless Coalition, Parks and Rec, LRCVB, Downtown Partnership, LRPD, Clinton Center, and a River Market business owner. And each entity would pick their own representative, and they've got a timeline, and it would be, I think, the July, I counted the days, I think it's July the 10th or 11th, whatever that meeting, they would come back and present us with something that's more comprehensive than what we have now, but that would enable us to continue to take care of the folks who need the assistance, but to address some of the concerns that other people have raised.
Got a question. I've got a question.
Go ahead, please.
How many people are on this committee?
9.
Is it equally divided by the people who either serve the homeless and the homeless as the Downtown Partnership and the Chamber and the other organizations?
It has one from Parks and Rec, one from Interfaith Alliance, 2 from the Homeless Coalition, 1 from LRCVB, 1 from River Market, 1 from Clinton, 1 from Downtown Partnership, and 1 from LRPD.
I think I would like for you to look at that, adding at least 2 more on that are people who either work with the homeless or people in organizations connected to the homeless.
That'd be fine with me.
To make it more balanced.
That'd be fine.
Let's have a little order in here, please.
And the thought was
It is not appropriate to have an outburst like that.
by
Let's
having
respect the conduct and decorum of this meeting, please.
if each entity chose their own people, that would not preclude people from who were homeless being at the table, because they should be at the table, and so that would.
I would like
not
to see you
preclude
add
that.
2 homeless people on that, 1 shelter and 1 non-shelter person. Thank you.
Mayor.
Let's see, who's next? Director Hendricks, you're next, please. On the motion to table. You just turned your machine off.
Mine is on.
I want the members that are here tonight, things are confusing up here. The subject came up about voting with the school board and all that stuff, and then it got mixed up with the homeless. So I want to let you know that you intertwine 2 subjects, and that's what I'm sitting on, okay? The mayor always try to make me look like a nut, but I can make him look like a nut, too. And I'm serious.
Director Hendricks, that's certainly not the case, and
Yeah,
I'm
I
sorry
wanna
that if
straighten
you
it out.
got confused
I'm no
on it.
fool.
I think we're back on track now,
Yeah,
hopefully.
yeah, you're back
All
on
right,
track.
very good.
Yes, Mayor.
Director Hines, you're recognized, please.
Vice Mayor, along with Director Adcock, I think that, the homeless problem is all over our city. We're dealing with it out on the western edges of the city as well. And so this seems like a pretty downtown-centric focused committee, and I think we ought to have some from the business community or residential community that are dealing with some of the issues that are arising from the homeless issue out. We've got West Markham. We had a homeless person drown because they were camped out under a bridge in Rock Creek, and that's impacting some of the neighborhoods along those areas as well as the businesses. So if we can expand it to be a little more inclusive, I would appreciate it. Thanks.
Well, are you making a recommendation, a specific recommendation, so we can make sure that there's some direction here specifically? All right, I assume you'll let us go ahead and make sure that we can have a fair representation of all the various interested parties that wish to be involved.
Well, Mayor, I'd like to dovetail Director Hines' point. I mean,
Mayor.
Just a second, I have to recognize people
I want to
appropriately.
raise a point of order. Nobody else has raised it. Y'all are off the topic. The topic is whether or not to table the resolution right now, not what are going to be the details of something else offered.
All right, thank you, Mr. Carpenter. All right, who wishes to speak either for or against the motion to table?
I'm still against it,
Director,
Mayor. so
Director
for a
Wright, do
number
you
of
wish to
reasons.
speak for or against the motion to table? All right, well, all right. Director Richardson, do you wish to speak for or against the motion to table?
Yes, Mayor, I want to speak against it. Once again, I'm not sure I understand the impetus for us doing this, and then even the makeup, echo Director Hines' point, the makeup or decision to decide on the makeup of the task force, it's all quite confusing. I'm not Director Hendricks Jr., so you're not going to make a fool out of me. But I just think that I'm against tabling it. I mean, I think the issues come before us, and I don't know if we just
Director Peck, you're recognized, please.
Thank you. I support tabling it, and I appreciate some behind-the-scenes work that Vice Mayor Webb and Director Compuris have done. I've received a lot of emails, phone calls. I think the best way to deal with this is to populate it. I think Director Adcock had a great idea to add some more people that actually work with the homeless, and got a specific time frame, stick to that, work together, prove to everybody that we're a compassionate city.
Director Hendricks, do you wish to speak for or against the motion to table?
Against.
All right.
I want to know, I would like to ask Kathy if we have any homeless people on that committee.
Yes,
All due
ma'am.
respect, that's not the issue. It's a
What was
point
your
of order. The
response?
question is
Yes, ma'am.
simply whether to table.
I don't know what she said.
She said, yes, there will be.
I didn't say will be. I'm talking about the names that she named. Are any of those persons a member of the homeless people? Yes or no?
Do you want me to answer? I mean, am I out of order?
No. Mr. Carpenter has indicated appropriately that
She doesn't
this
have to
issue is
answer.
about whether we continue with discussion tonight or whether we table
I'm not
this
through
ordinance.
I'm not through
And
talking.
people can
I'm not
advocate
through
why it
talking.
should
I'm
be
not through
tabled or
talking.
why it should not be tabled.
I'm not through talking. Tom, you
Well,
know
I'm
better
trying to explain the procedure and you're interrupting, so
Oh, no, you
please,
you should have
if
explained
you will,
what some of
please,
these other folk were
Director
talking.
Hendricks, if you will, I'll be happy to recognize you for as long as you wish to speak, but I'm trying to answer questions. Your question,
was on
Mr.
the-
Carpenter indicated, was not appropriate, and I'm trying to explain the reasons why that's the case. This is about whether we continue with discussion about this or whether we do it after this group meets for 8 weeks. Now, if you want to hear it right now and you want to hear everything right now, then you're against the motion to table.
I'm going to do it right. The other members, I have something to say along with what I got to say. And that's what I was saying, is that did we have anybody on the commission originally? And my answer, I believe, is no. And I say we tabled it.
All right, on the motion to table, Director Fortson.
Yes, Mayor, I am in favor of the motion to table simply because it's obvious that the ordinance in front of us in the minds of many people does not solve the problem and does not speak to all of the questions, so I think it's inappropriate for us to consider it right now, so I'm for tabling it tonight.
On the motion to table, Director Hines.
I'd like to call the question, Mayor. I support the motion
All
to
right.
table.
The question's been called. Is there a second to it? All in favor of calling the question indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. All right, the question is to be called. All in favor of the motion to table as specified for 8 weeks indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. So it will be tabled for that period of time, and this committee will be put together. We'll keep everybody informed about it, and certainly, in addition to those people who are appointed to it, anyone in the public will be welcome to be in attendance as well. So, again, sometimes the issues of what the city does to help the homeless get lost in the shuffle. I want everybody to remember that the Day Resource Center is open every 5 days a week, dealing with 150 homeless people for breakfast and for lunch, and certainly that will continue independent of any of these activities that we further elaborate and commit to. So thank you very much for your attention. If you wish to hang around for the rest of our board meeting, you're welcome to. Otherwise, I'll give everybody a moment to excuse themselves. Just a second. On this issue? Well, let me just wait till they. Director Wyrick, huh? I'll call you. I just haven't, do it in order. Hang on. No, I haven't turned you off yet. I'm getting ready. No, I haven't called on you yet. You're next. Okay, all right. Board members, if I could have your attention, please. Director Wyrick, you're recognized, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to kind of understand what the timeline is for us to get started on this. I know we've got 8 weeks, and is there a communications person that's a contact for these people to get in touch with? How's that going to work?
Mr. Moore, do you wish to weigh in on this at this point?
Members of the board, as the Vice Mayor noted, I've asked our Assistant City Manager to facilitate this process. So James has been to Denver and looked at it along with other staff. So we have the list. We'll sit down with the Vice Mayor, make sure we have the appropriate names that were added. I think Director Hines wants to add, and then we'll get started as soon as possible. We know the time frame that they need to report back.
Okay, and you'll keep the board informed
We
of
will.
the meetings and all that? And
We
who's
will.
going to participate in this study?
Once we get the list, again, I think it's important that the groups get to select, and so we'll make outreach with them starting tomorrow and get that list compiled, and hopefully we'll have it by Friday.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Director Wright, you're recognized, please.
Thank you, Mayor. When this group takes up their discussion, I hope that they will look at more than just feeding in the park. I met Friday with one of my grocery stores. I only have 2. That's between University and Shackelford. And they are being besieged, and they are threatening to leave. And I don't want to have a food desert because these people are being besieged with this situation. Sleeping on the parking lot, running off the customers, and the usual comes with when people live outside and without proper facilities. So this is a major issue, and I wanted the homeless coalition of people here to hear about this real issue, because we have food deserts in our city, and I'm about to have one. These people are serious about this grocery store leaving, and I need a solution. I need some help. Mr. Moore wasn't able to meet, but the staff and I met out there. This is a real issue. We just had this meeting this past Friday. So I would like for them to give us some solutions. If they got solutions, I need to hear them. Thank you.
Director Richardson, you're recognized, please.
Yes, Mayor, you made reference to our homeless center, and one of the things I'd like to note that it's not easily accessible. It's not within, it's in the southeast part of our city. It's out near Granite Mountain, and I think that a lot of folks that had the ability to access that, they wouldn't be homeless in some cases. And back to Director Wright's point, if you want to hear their perspective on it, they made recommendation on us not having it out there. So I need, since you made reference to the Day Resource Center, I want to make reference for the record that that's not centrally located. It's in a far out
Well,
place.
there's probably some disagreement about that, Director Richardson.
Granite Mountain.
The male shelters that we have no longer exist downtown. They exist across the street from the Day Resource Center, and then way out on Asher Avenue at the Compassion Center, which clearly is not what I would consider to be downtown. So the point probably that's most accurate is that anyone who drives around the city knows that there are homeless everywhere in the city, east, south, north, and west. And so and it's fair to say that we can go anywhere in this city and see the indications of people who are out asking for food or asking for money for food or asking for help. So
No, there's no
the only point I
disagreement.
wanted to
Yeah.
make, the point I wanted to make is that every day, 150 people are served meals. Homeless people are served meals. In fact, in the first quarter, there were 10,722 meals served to the homeless. So that's just the point that I was making, is that the city has worked very hard. The mayor in particular has worked very hard to make sure that we got a day resource center that is trying to take care of many of the needs that have been expressed and talked about here tonight.
I'm not disputing, Mayor.
Jobs,
what we're
employment,
doing,
et
but
cetera.
The one thing I am trying to point out, and if I'm wrong, please correct me, but the lion's share of the city's resources are committed to the Jericho Way. Is that not correct? Mayor Bruce?
Well, I don't know what you mean by city resources. We support it
Financial
operationally.
contribution.
North Little Rock supports it operationally. We have
The city's
vans
financial
that travel the
contribution.
entire city to pick up the homeless, to take them there.
The lion's share of our contribution from a resource standpoint, whether it's financial, whether it's transportation, is committed to Jericho Way, correct? And that's not easily accessible. That's way out. I mean, it's not within close proximity of a lot of the homeless issues we're having.
As
And I
said,
don't make that
think there's
point,
some
since you
people
made,
that
you made
disagree
the
with
point
you
for
about that.
record. I want to make that point for the record as well, that those places not easily accessible, and to point out that, and I hope I'm wrong, I hope to be corrected on that, the lion's share of our financial resources and those city resources are committed to Jericho Way.
Vice Mayor Webb, you're recognized, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just as somebody who spends a lot of time at Jericho Way, you know, I'm glad that our city puts the resources into it that we do. And in visiting other places like Austin, which has a lot of entities that are really best practices for assisting the homeless, many of whom they assist into permanent places to live, and then other folks who don't want to have permanent places. But we spend a lot of money, individuals in this city spend a lot of money in a very uncoordinated manner. And one of the things that I hope we can do in the next 8 weeks is, by bringing all of these folks together, try to figure out some of the better ways we can get some of the very generous donors to work more in sync, so we can truly come up with some positive solutions. So I think our city spends more than a lot of cities do, but we're failing to take advantage of coordinating private resources as well, and that's something else we need to do a lot better.
Okay, let's move into our consent agenda, if we could, please. Madam Clerk, if you would, read the consent agenda as amended.
The consent agenda consists of a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with J.A. Riggs at an amount not to exceed $51,070.80 for a Caterpillar Model 249D utilizing the National Joint Powers Alliance and for other purposes. A resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with Superior Protection Services Corporation doing business as Advert Group USA in an amount not to exceed $216,500 to provide security for city structures and for other purposes. A resolution to set a moratorium on the approval of any conditional use permit for residential development in the extraterritorial jurisdiction that intends to use a package plant as a wastewater treatment plant until the existing studies on sewer service to such an area and the provision of service to such an area is complete, and for the purposes, a resolution to amend Little Rock, Arkansas Resolution Number 13,329 of July the 7th, 2011, to expand the current area for a non-exclusive agreement with the Arkansas Research and Education Network to permit further expansions upon review by the city manager and for the purposes. That concludes the consent agenda.
Is there a motion to adopt? Yes, Director Adcock, you're recognized,
Mr.
please.
Moore or Mr. Carpenter, on item number 3, what about a existing wastewater treatment plant in that area that has problems, that quits operating? Will they be allowed to repair it or to replace it?
Director Adcock, it doesn't address that issue, and I think in terms of the overriding issue of is this an area that is going to be served or could be served by the Little Rock wastewater utility, we would have to take that up on a case-by-case basis as it arises. So I've not been told of any of those. I have been told that there was one potential developer who might be affected, but that they understand this and are not moving forward at this time. If it does come up, then I think we have to take that up as it comes up.
Okay, we don't need to amend this to include that?
We don't know that they're out there, and nobody has indicated that there are any out there at this point.
Move for the adoption of the resolutions.
There's a motion and a second to adopt the consent agenda. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. The consent agenda is adopted. We can now move on to the grouped items, item 5 and item 6, please.
An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a plan office district titled Presbyterian Village, revised short form POD, located at 510 Brookside Drive, Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for other purposes. An ordinance to dispense with the requirement of competitive selection and authorize the city manager to renew a contract with N4 USA Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $1,303,974.65, plus any applicable taxes for software maintenance for the city's enterprise resource planning system, to declare an emergency and for the purposes first reading.
Move suspend the rules and place on second reading.
There's a motion and a second to suspend the rules and place these ordinances on second reading. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Second reading, please.
An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development and establish a plan office district titled Presbyterian Village, revised short form POD, located at 510 Brookside Drive. An ordinance to dispense with the requirement of competitive selection and authorize the city manager to renew a contract with N4 USA or N4 US Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $1,303,974.65, plus any applicable taxes for software maintenance for the city's enterprise resource planning system, to declare an emergency. Second reading.
Move suspend the rules and place on third and final reading.
There's a second. All right. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Third and final reading, please.
An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development and establish a plan office district titled Presbyterian Village, revised short form POD, located at 510 Brookside Drive. An ordinance to dispense with the requirement of competitive selection and authorize the city manager to renew a contract with N4 US Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $1,303,974.65, plus any applicable taxes for software maintenance for the city's enterprise resource planning system, to declare emergency. Third and final reading.
Director Richardson, do you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Bruce, on number 7, is this an extension of an existing contract or?
Are you, 5 or 6, Director?
I'm sorry, I'm a little bit ahead of myself. I'm anxious. I'll say, sorry.
Okay. If there are no questions on these items, all in favor of the passage of these two ordinances indicate by saying aye. Opposed, say nay. The ordinances have passed. And on the emergency clause, all in favor of the emergency clause on ordinance number 6 indicate by saying aye. Opposed, say nay. The emergency clause is also passed. All right, now we can move on to the next item, which is a resolution dealing with the taxi cab permits. Let me have a reading. Madam Clerk, if you would read the resolution, please, and then I'll call on anyone who has, Director Adcock has a question.
A resolution to approve 1 operator permit and 7 taxi cab permits for Ken's Cab LLC for the period from January 1st, 2017 to December 31st, 2017, and for other purposes.
Director Adcock, you're recognized, please.
Mr. Moore, I don't know if you can answer these questions or if Mr. Hinton can. On this, have they been operating illegally in the city?
If the question is, have I seen them in Little Rock, but prior to today operating, I have.
Okay. And Mr. Carpenter, we had a lawsuit filed against us by these people. What is the status of that lawsuit?
Lawsuit is over. It ended, there was a finding that the city's requirement on the showing of necessity and convenience was not legal in light of the fact that the TNCs like Uber are now present. We chose not to appeal because we weren't going to be able to make a finding that you couldn't be a taxi when you've got something like 150 or 200 Uber drivers in Little Rock now.
Okay. Mr. Moore, has any of your staff checked this 24-hour location that they'll be operating out of, and where is it located?
They have. Let me ask our fleet director, Mr. Hinton, to come forward.
Thank you. Hello, Mr. Hinton.
Director Adcock, Mayor Stoller, Board. Yes, we did go out. Mr. Brooks goes out to anybody that's going to be permitted, take pictures of the facility, the office, and the address. And they are on 2nd Street. Tell you the exact address.
Do you have a picture of the location?
Yes, ma'am. That's the location.
Okay, is this an office building?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it his office, legal lawyer's office?
Yes, ma'am.
So he's operating out of his lawyer's office?
Now, that I don't know. I don't know whether it's a large office or not, but he is Hughes Cab, Office 109. So he's operating out of there. And
Is it a 24/7 operation?
yes, ma'am.
And how many employees does he have?
He has 3 cabs now, I believe, and he's going to expand to 7.
How about in his office?
Now, I don't know exactly how many people is in the office. I haven't seen, I didn't go out particularly, Mr. Brooks
Did
did.
you check to see how he's dispatching his cabs? Is it from a cell phone or is it from a person in an office?
I would probably be better able to let him answer that. He is here.
Okay.
It will have to
your
be from a
request.
dispatch after he gets the taxi cab permits that he's seeking tonight.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Something's wrong with your mic tonight, Mr. Carpenter.
No, it's his voice.
The fact somebody wants to hear a lawyer is music to my ears, Director Adcock. He will have to have the 24/7 dispatch once these permits are granted. And Mr. Hinton's office periodically checks that to make sure that it's there. In terms of what's happened up to now, he hasn't really had the permits.
Mr. Hinton, have you checked his automobiles? I know that we require a certain age of automobiles and condition of automobiles.
Yes, ma'am, Director Adcock. Mr. Brooks does that, and they are in conformance.
They're all conforming to our rules and everything.
Yes, ma'am.
And how about the other location, the parking lot and things? Where is that located, where he keeps his cabs?
I'll let him answer that.
Okay? Microphone.
Yeah, the drivers take their taxis home with them.
So you
So-
don't have a
So we
location?
we don't have a lot for the taxis. Each driver takes the taxi home and keeps the taxi.
The location at 109 East 2nd Street, is that a joint office with other people? Is that just a taxi office?
It's 1015 West 2nd Street, and it's an office building, and we have our own office in the building.
Okay, is it a shared office, or is it just?
No, it's just
Okay.
our own office, yeah.
Okay. And are you going to dispatch out of that? Do you have 24/7 employees
Yes,
there?
yes, we do.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, is there a motion to approve resolution number 7? Oh, all right, Director Richardson's, excuse me. Go ahead, Director Richardson.
Yeah, Mayor, one quick question. Bruce, is this an extension of ongoing contract? Is it a new contract? And then Tom, secondly, without, other than having a central location, how does it differentiate from Uber? I hadn't seen heard too much difference in terms of, especially with them taking their vehicles home. How is this different, other than having a central located office for dispatch?
We're allowed to regulate taxis, we're not allowed to regulate Uber. So that's the main difference in that sense. And, you know, all of the requirements we have about maintenance, about who drives, about what the drivers can and cannot do, that applies to these taxi drivers the same as it does to Greater Little Rock Transportation. It doesn't apply to Uber.
Gotcha. Bruce, on the contract or the permit?
This is a new one.
Okay, thank you. Was it issued through RFQ, RFP?
It was a request to, for these permits.
Thank you.
Director Hendricks, you're recognized, please.
Thank you. I want to let this group know one board person does not run this board, and I have a question for you, Mr. Moore. I noticed that you had certain expressions on your face, so the questions that were asked of the gentleman, were they appropriate? You really almost tore up at some questions that Adcock was asking, and so was Tom.
Director Hendricks, it's been my practice to allow the city attorney to weigh in, as he did earlier, when he feels a question is inappropriate, and so I don't normally do that unless
It's just your
dealing
face,
with a
huh?
staff member.
Just your face. But Tom, the question is to you. I noticed you had expressions too, but you didn't say anything.
I also have the wrong glasses on at the moment, which has something to do with that. But the general answer to the question is that I think that Director Adcock was proper in asking these questions because one of the problems that we had in the past with Ken's Cab is that there was no central dispatch with 24/7 availability. And they were essentially doing this by cell phones. They have agreed they're going to follow our ordinance entirely, which means they're going to have 24/7 dispatch, and it's not just going to be done by cell phones. And so the concept of whether there's enough room for a 24/7 dispatch and that, a little questioning was okay. And the gentleman explained that, no, this is an office for King Cabs only, it's not an office for his lawyer.
Tom, let me ask you a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Is it for you or Bruce to ask a person that's hired in this position if that company has done everything?
I
Is
think
that your job or Bruce's?
Well, I
You
think
know, I'm getting tired of sitting up here, you know, and I'm not deaf.
the short answer is that the Fleet Services Department is under the city manager.
But you're administration, aren't you, you and Bruce?
Well, yeah, but I'm the legal part.
Yeah, I
I'm
know,
not
I know
the
what you
carry it
are.
out part, and Bruce is the carry it out part. And that's why he called, I don't want to speak for him, but I think that's why he called Mr. Hinton up here, because Mr. Hinton's the one responsible for being able to give answers to those questions.
Okay, and then those questions that Mr. Henson is asked, Bruce should have clarified that those things were in place. Am I right, Bruce?
Director Hendricks,
Yes or no? I don't need nothing.
I mean, typically, what would have happened, these questions came up last Tuesday. Typically, I would have responded in a memo to you all with those answers. I was out of town Wednesday and Thursday, so that I did not get that to you all. So that's why I called on Mr. Hinton. These questions were asked as a follow-up last Tuesday. And
By you?
No, by board members. And
What board member? I didn't ask.
I
Okay,
didn't write down who asked,
Oh,
but
enough. I have enough. Thanks, Bruce. There's gonna be some changes around here.
All right, is there a motion to approve resolution number 7? Is there a second? All in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed, say nay. The resolution is approved. We can now move on to items 9 and 10. I'm going to go ahead and open up the public hearing on ordinance number 9 and ask for the first reading, please.
An ordinance to abandon a 20-foot wide access and utility easement located in the southern portion of Lot 204, Sandpiper Addition, in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes, first reading.
There's a motion
Second.
and a second to suspend the rules and place this ordinance on second reading. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Second reading, please.
An ordinance to abandon a 20-foot wide access and utility easement located in the southern portion of Lot 204, Sandpiper Addition, second reading.
Suspend the rules and place on third and final reading.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of the motion to move to second reading indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay.
Third reading.
Are we on third reading? Third reading, please.
An ordinance to abandon a 20-foot wide access and utility easement located in the southern portion of Lot 204, Sandpiper Addition, third and final reading.
Okay, is there any questions? Anyone wish to speak either for or against this item? Seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing and call for a vote. All in favor of the passage of ordinance number 9 indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. The ordinance is passed. We can now move on to ordinance number 10, and let me ask for the first reading of ordinance number 10, please.
An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a planned residential district titled Track 75, Chenal Valley Longform PDR, located on the northwest corner of Champano Drive and Rawling Road, Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes, first reading.
We would suspend the rules and put on second reading.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to suspend the rules and place this ordinance on second reading. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Second reading, please.
An ordinance to approve a planned zoning development, establish a planned residential district titled Track 75, Chenal Valley Longform PDR, located on the northwest corner of Champano Drive and Rawling Road, second reading.
We would suspend the rules and place on third and final reading.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to suspend the rules and place this ordinance on third and final reading. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Third and final reading, please.
An ordinance to approve a planned zoning development, establish a planned residential district titled Track 75, Chenal Valley Longform PDR, located on the northwest corner of Champano Drive and Rawling Road, third and final reading.
Okay, Director Campuris. Director Campuris, you're recognized, please.
Mayor, we have, or at least I have, I'm sure everybody else has gotten lots of information about the zoning of this property. And I have read it diligently, and I've given it to Tony, as they suggested in the letter. Do you think Tony, before we start, could come and tell us what the zoning is on this property and where so we start out where everybody has, where we, at least we have the official position of the city?
Sure. Mr. Moore, if we could have Mr. Buzinski come forward and basically respond to that issue and then outline the actions before the Planning Commission and the staff's recommendation as well, please.
Mr. Brzezinski.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, Director Computers, members of the board, the property in question is currently zoned planned office development expired. The property was reclassified to the planned development in 2010. The planned development has a life of 3 years unless the project is started or extension is requested. That's was not the case in this, so it has expired. Staff from both planning and public works, Dana Carney, Donna James, Vince Harper from Public Works, and myself, we spent a lot of time because I know questions have come up about the zoning because there's always underlying zoning on a planned development. And in a lot of cases, planned developments are revoked, and they have to be revoked by ordinance because they're created by ordinance. And if they're revoked, then the zoning goes back to the underlying zoning. In this case, we have determined, after, again, spending a lot of time on this, on the question of zoning, that the entire, what is referred to as Track 75, was zoned O2 prior to the planned development. we went back to the 1987 ordinance that approved what I'll refer to as the Chenal zoning plan. That covered a total of 3,000 acres. And in that, the language starts out with all property within this described area, and needs to say there's a long legal zone R2 less than and except the following properties. And those are indicated by tracks, or tracks. And if track 9, which is the one that covers track 75, it's zoned approximately 54 acres to O2 office district. And again, track 75 falls within that original O2 office zoning. So we feel that based on our reviewing of the ordinances and other information, that the underlying zoning of this track is O2 or office.
And I went over Sunday all the things that were left, and what I had in a colored map was there was R2 in there, so you don't think there is any R2?
Director Compures, no, we could not find any reference to R2, and in fact, the map that laid out the zoning plan shows that area as O2 with a medical clinic at one location, proposed medical clinic, a branch bank, a proposed church, even what they're referring to as a hospital reserve, and we did not find any R2.
Thank you.
Director Richardson, you're recognized, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Tony, given that I suffer from selective amnesia, this is one of the few times I've noticed there's been a disconnect between the Planning Commission recommendation and staff's recommendation. Can you somewhat explain that to us a little bit, where that disconnect is? And it may not be a fair question because we had 2 absent and only failed by 1. But
Director Richardson, you're correct. It was a split vote by the Planning Commission. There were 4 ayes and 5 noes. Some of the comments at the Planning Commission meeting were in reference to, I think, what some of the residents had heard, that how this property would be developed.
Mm-hmm.
And so they, I think, placed some weight on that, and they listened to both sides, obviously, and took the vote. Staff feels that if you look at the graphic in front of you, this is an area that has a very mixed zoning pattern, primarily in this immediate area, non-residential. There's C1, C2 across the street, planned developments on the east side of Rawling, the large promenade at Chenal, the C2, and then continuing north on Rawling, there's C3. And we feel that what's being proposed, which is a age-restricted multifamily development, fits that zoning pattern.
Thank you, sir.
Director Fortson, you're recognized, please.
Tony, as I understand what you said, the tract in question, a POD was approved in 2010, but it was never completed. Nothing was ever built, and that expired in 2013.
Yes.
When that expired, did I understand you say then it reverts back to O2?
Director Fortson, it has to take an ordinance to revoke it.
Right.
And then it would, unless there's some zoning action as part of that revocation, it would go back to the underlying zoning, which is the O2.
Okay, I'm going to ask you the same question I asked last Tuesday, just as long as you're on your feet. Tell me again, what can be built by right today on something zoned O2?
By right, in O2, which, let me, before I mention some of the, O2 is a site plan review district.
Okay.
So before a building permit can be issued, Site plan has to be reviewed and approved by the Planning Commission. It's more of a technical review. In O2, the uses, some of them are bank or savings and loan office, church, and I'll have to, college dormitory, college sorority or fraternity, college university, day nursery or day care center, both for children and adults, fire station, a hospital, nursing home or convalescent home, of course, an office, general or professional, photography studio. Those are the permitted uses. Then there's the conditional uses, which include a cemetery, eating place without drive-in service, health studio or spa, what's referred to as high-rise multifamily at a density not greater than 30 units per acre, motel, hotel, and several others.
Okay, we've gotten a lot of literature and a lot of communications that talked about what you just discussed. We've also had a lot that talked about an agreement that existed at some point in time between the developer and some residents in the area. And I asked you, I think, or Attorney Carpenter last week, had you seen that agreement and do you have any comment? I guess it was Tom, I asked you that.
Yes, sir.
Have you had an opportunity to review it?
I've reviewed the agreement. I've also reviewed the ordinances that deal with this tract of property. I didn't go quite far as back to the original layout for Chenal. The agreement dealt with the prior zoning request. And in the agreement, there were certain things that Deltic would do. One would be to make a contribution for a gate for a particular community. But the agreement only dealt with that particular project. That project did not cover all of this property, and it included, at the time, different uses that would probably be considered even more intense than these. The main point, though, is that agreement has nothing to do with this planned development request.
That's all I have for now. I have some later, Mayor.
All right, Director Hendricks, you're recognized, please.
Thank you. Tony, I want to ask you, at the public meeting that was held, not the Planning Commission, was there a public meeting held in that area?
Director Hendricks, I know staff did not attend any meeting if there was one, so I can't tell you whether the applicant
And the reason why I
held-
asked the question is that when you look at that open space, what's wrong? And you did name several businesses that could be placed in that area.
Not in the open space. That's basically zoning that you can't develop. It's on the what's allowed in the
Yeah, that's
O2
what I'm
zoning
saying.
district.
What's allowed?
Yes.
Okay. Would you name those again for me, please?
Bank or savings and loan office, a church, various college uses such as a fraternity or sorority, the college itself, obviously, convent, daycares for both children and adults, fire station, hospital, funeral home, nursing or convalescent home.
Thanks, Tony. That's enough. Thank you. I hope the residents is aware of what else could be there.
Okay, thank you, Tony. You might want to stand close by in case there's other questions that somebody wishes to ask. We can now move on to the applicant and people who wish to speak both for and against this item. So let me call on the applicant, please.
Thank you, Mayor Stoll, Vice Mayor Webb, directors, Mr. Moore, Ms. Langley, who is not here, Mr. Carpenter. My name is Bill Spivey. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Wright, Lindsay, and Jennings here in Little Rock, and it's my privilege tonight to appear on behalf of Deltic Timber Corporation, the applicant in this appeal. This matter came before the Little Rock Planning Commission earlier this year. As Mr. Bazinski has indicated, with the support of your planning staff and received 4 of 9 votes in favor of the proposal. This matter has been appealed to you for reconsideration, and tonight we seek your approval for reversing the decision of the Planning Commission with respect to the creation of a planned residential development, or PRD, on real property known as Tract 75, Chenal Valley. Now, as is sometimes the case in Mr. Bazinski's presentation, he covers everything that I had planned to cover. So I will not, I'll attempt not to be redundant, but let me just make a few points. This property has been zoned O2 for over 30 years, hasn't changed, with the exception of the POD overlay, which occurred in 2010, which has expired and is subject to revocation. There was a situation, and this has come before this board on a number of occasions in different forms, back in 2008, which resulted in the creation of a 100-foot undisturbed buffer between the Witry Court neighborhood and Tract 75. There was also some rezoning that occurred on a completely different piece of property on the other side of Champenolle Drive, south of Champenolle, where a formerly MF24 site was rezoned to a combination of C1 and C2 with some restrictions. Clearly, to the extent that multifamily is permitted in a C1 and C2 and you're removing multifamily, it'd be disingenuous to go in and change it and not take out the related uses, which was done. All of this was done with the understanding, approval, and support of the Witry Court neighborhood. As Mr. Bazinski also mentioned, Deltic made a contribution of $25,000 to assist in the construction of a gate, which more or less made Witry no longer a public street. And Deltic's engineer, Mr. Tim Daters, with the cooperation of both Witry Court neighborhood and the Bascom Place neighborhood, designed, constructed, and installed and paid for 2 very nice big pedestrian tables on Champenolle, which are intended to slow traffic and which has. Now, rather than go back over the same things Mr. Bazinski's already covered, what I'd like to do is introduce Mr. Tim Daters, who's the project engineer and who appears here tonight on behalf of Deltic, but also on behalf of Resort Lifestyle Communities, who will develop this property if approved, and let them tell you about the property and let them tell you about the project. Mr. Ernie Peters is also here, and to the extent that there may be questions about some of the traffic projections which have been developed, Mr. Daters will certainly, and Mr. Peters will certainly reflect on that. So let me get out of the way and let them come to the podium. Thank you.
The other one, Scott, I'm sorry. It's the other one, I'm sorry. Yes. Mayor, directors, my name is Tim Daters. I'm a consultant engineer with White Daters and Associates. Scott, if you could, the tract that we're looking at today is Tract 75 in Chenal Valley. It's located at the northwest corner of Rawling Road and Champenolle. Scott, if you'll slide forward a couple slides. This shows the, back up one, I'm sorry. This shows the overall location of the project on the overall Chenal Valley map that shows the approximately 6,000 acres that are part of Chenal Valley. You can see the tract located there in the lower right-hand corner. One more, Scott, then. This shows the project in relationship to the other developments in the area that we've been working on. The Promenade, which was completed in about 2006, 2008. The Bank of the Ozarks, their current headquarters. The St. Vincent's West Medical Complex off to the right on what is now St. Vincent Way. You see Chenal Park, Chenal Valley Drive, Chenal Parkway along the right-hand side, and our office is way up there in the corner. Next slide, Scott. This is a blow-up of the site with the adjacent areas. You can see just to the north of the site is the Rock Creek floodway, and that's the open space that showed up on Tony's maps. And let's see, Scott, it's right about in there. There's the floodway for Rock Creek right along the northern part of the tract. And then the open space between Witry and the development itself. And then on the south side is the Champenolle Park. And moving over to the west or the left side of this screen is one of the cul-de-sacs in Bascom. Bascom was I guess about the third or fourth phase we developed in Chenal Valley. It was in approximately 1992. It's one of the older phases in Chenal Valley. If you go to the next slide, please, Scott. This shows the overall planned residential development that we submitted. On either side of the main core are the residential wings. Along the western portion of the property adjacent to Wittry, you can see the 100-foot buffer adjacent to Wittry, and then the 50-foot buffer, which is on this tract and also undisturbed. If you look on the left-hand side of that drawing, you can see how the undisturbed area kind of spills all the way over to Champenois near where the park's entrance is. And part of what lets us keep that area undisturbed is that because this is a senior housing facility, they don't need the same number of parking spaces that traditional multifamily developments would develop. A facility like this operates successfully with somewhere around 165 to 170 parking spaces. And so because we can build less parking, we can use less of the site and leave more areas undisturbed. There's a series of garages adjacent to that 50-foot open space area, which we've placed over there to help screen the parking area in that area of the drive from the adjacent subdivision in Wittry. In between the garage structures, we've got screening and landscaping so that they form a solid barrier there that runs along the edge of the undisturbed area. This building actually will be set down in the ground adjacent to Wittry. We're going to excavate and set it down. As you go closer to Rawling Road, it starts to come up a little bit, but actually the building sets below grade along the portion closest to Wittry. You can do the next slide, Scott. And this is our landscape plan of the development of the final landscaping. You can see the large undisturbed buffer adjacent to the subdivision. Along the edges of the buffer, once we've developed up to the edge of the buffer, we're going to come in along the edges of the buffer and plant evergreen trees, or evergreen shrubs and trees, probably arborvitae or something like that, that can then thrive because they'll have sunlight from one side and will not be buried inside a buffer. We're also going to do landscaping along the street, landscaping along the building, and additional landscaping on the Rawling Road frontage, which you see on the right-hand portion. Also on this sheet, you can see a section AA, which is drawn through the site into the backyards of some of the residents there on Wittry Court, and we've developed that cross section so that you can get a better feel for elevation and spacing wise what this will actually look like. So if you go to the next slide, Scott. This shows the section looking from the rear of that house across the buffer and then over to where the apartment building is. Because of the angle there to be able to see the apartment building, it's actually 362 feet from the back of the residence to the face of the multifamily senior living structure. That's over one city block. In other words, it's a city block without structures in it other than the small garages that we placed there to help screen. The floor elevation of the multifamily structure that we're looking at will be 13 feet below the floor elevation of that residence. And our actual eave, or the top of the bottom of our roof, is actually going to be 3 feet below the eave of that residence. So this structure, while it is bigger, does sit down on the ground and will not loom or tower over those residences. Can I see the next slide, Scott? We did meet Director Hendricks with the neighborhood. We met with the Bascom POA and we met with the Wittry POA in our office prior to the Planning Commission meeting. And after the Planning Commission meeting, we organized a meeting again at the library so that the Cameron and Resort Lifestyle communities could explain how their facility functioned to anyone who was interested. One of the questions that came up after that meeting was what else can happen on this site? What are the other things that can happen if this project doesn't go? What are the other things that we've looked at? What we did then is we looked at different development scenarios that could take place with allowable O2 uses. And Ernie Peters, we prepared the site plans, and then Ernie Peters did a traffic analysis on those. Since we started working on this tract, which was probably in the early 2000s, prior to the promenade, we've looked at several different development alternatives. the alternative that you see on the left under column A is this project. In other words, that's this project compared with other land uses on this same 8-acre office tract. This thing generates approximately 478 trips per day, which is well below all the other uses that we looked at again on this 8-acre tract. Even the original category D is the original POD that was approved but has now expired in 2010. That POD generated 1,300 trips per day as compared with this at 478. If this is developed as a single larger office building, because it is an 8-acre tract, the average daily traffic count will be almost 4,000 vehicles per day. On the next slide, please, Scott. These show the peak AM and PM hour traffics counts, and again with this facility under A, you see that during both the peak AM and the peak PM hour, because of the nature of the senior facility, the traffic generated is extremely low compared with the other uses that we've got. And again, D being the previous POD use, but again, you can see extremely low peak hour uses, and these have been corroborated. Resort Lifestyle Communities actually did a traffic count at one of their developments with the same number of units and matched up very closely with these numbers. The next slide, Scott. These are some of the layouts that we used to help Ernie develop his numbers. This is just a single large office building, which was scenario B. It's about a 5-story, 150,000 square foot office building. That's similar to what Nouvelle is on Systems Drive, or the Axiom building also on Systems Drive. The next slide, Ernie. This is a smaller office building, and office buildings of this size are typically about 15,000 square foot footprints. They're 100 by 150. That's what works on the bay spacing. This is something very similar to what you would see on the Euronet building, which is on again, Systems Drive. This contemplates a 2-lot development where there would be 1 lot with the office building. Then as you approach Rawling Road, we've shown a small daycare and then a bank right on the corner itself. And again, in O2, the minimum lot size is 2 acres. So again, this would be a 6-acre lot and a 2-acre lot. And then the next slide. This is another allowable use in O2, which is a school, either parochial, public. It doesn't really differentiate what kind of school. It can be youth or adult, with a gym and a small sports field. And this was the scenario E that you saw in those previous counts. These are, again, all allowable O2 uses. This would go, again, Tony mentioned, this would go through a site plan review because it's got multiple building sites on it. And so what we'd be required to do is comply with the spacings, the setbacks, the driveway locations, et cetera, as part of that technical site plan review process. The next slide, Scott. Again, this is back at the landscape plan showing the project that we're asking you to approve today, the Senior Living Center. Also with me today is Bob Lewis with Cameron Construction. They're the development arm of Resort Lifestyle Communities. Bob's the most familiar with what the building actually, what takes place in the building, what it is when it's in operation, and what goes on inside the building. So I'd like to ask Bob to give us some background on that.
Mr. Mayor, members of the board, Bob Lewis with Cameron General Contractors, Lincoln, Nebraska. Cameron is the developer for this project. Resort Lifestyle Communities, which is under the same ownership, will be the operator. So we are the builder, the developer, the owner, and the operator of this community. What you see in front of you is our typical operation, our typical independent living community. It's made up of 130 living units, 128 of which are rentable. We have one is a guest suite for residents that have guests that want to visit them there, or if they live in one of our other communities and want to come to Little Rock, they can do so and stay in that guest suite. The other suite that is not rentable is for our live-in manager couple. These are all operated the same. Again, this is a prototype. These are all inclusive independent living communities. We offer a live-in manager. We have a concierge. We have valet parking. We have chefs and 3 meals a day. We have a fitness director. We have a 150-seat theater for use for our residents as a common area and for shows. We have space within the building for our residents. We, approximately 100 to 120 square feet, where we will rent it out to potentially a local pharmacy so they can pick up their pharmaceuticals at that location, or a gift shop, a bank, typical within these type of communities, a beauty salon or a barber also. It is a 3-story community. It's made up again of 128 rentable units. We have approximately 4 studios, 4 3-bedrooms, and the rest is between 1 and 2 bedroom units. The occupancy of the building, what we consider to be full occupancy, will be right around 160 to 175 residents. That's what we've seen in our other communities. We operate 16 of these around the country today. We've got approximately 20 more in development. Some of the concerns, we did have a meeting in May after Planning Commission to listen to the neighbors to see if we could understand some of their concerns. And we had that meeting. There were approximately 20 people in attendance. Some of the concerns were things like noise, for example. All of this in an independent living community, all of the activities take place inside the building. We don't have a large exterior area where they might be out there doing something that's causing disturbance to the neighborhood. That was a concern. The people that move into our communities, of the 16 years we've been doing this, the average move-in age is over 75. That's who moves into these communities. It is independent living, but the people who move in here have lost a spouse, the ability to drive, or just want to be done with home ownership and those issues involved in home ownership. We also, I didn't mention before, we have a full-time shuttle bus to take our residents around. So today, in the communities that we operate, 50% of our residents don't own cars. They don't drive. So we take care of that for them. It's all inclusive. We have 3 meals a day within the building. They don't need to leave. If we were to stick a pin at this location, I can tell you today, again, based on our history, that 80% of the residents that move in here live within 10 miles of this community today, of this location. That's who moves into our communities. There is a need. We did a market study. There is a need for this type of community in this area. There was a concern again at the meeting, well, what if it doesn't fill up? Well, again, we look at this, and we're in 16 other locations with another 20 or 25. We look at it as a big package. It'll take 2 to 3 years to reach occupancy, and we're fine with that. This is not subsidized housing. This is high-end resort lifestyle living. With that, I'll just reserve some time to answer questions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very briefly, Mr. Mayor, I guess I was just so discombobulated by the thoroughness of Mr. Bazinski's history that I forgot to introduce Mr. Dave McGreblian, who's the Vice President of Real Estate at Deltic. And since he's my client, I want to make sure that I point him out and mention him to you. So I would also like to reserve time to respond to comments and questions. Thank you.
We will do that. Thank you. Okay, that concludes the applicant's presentation. Let me move to the cards that we have who wish to speak about this. Jennifer Hill, may I recognize you, please?
Hello, everyone. My name is Jennifer Hill, and I live on Witchery Court. We're truly one of those old neighborhoods where our kids play outside until the lights come on. We don't borrow cups of sugar, but we may borrow a blender, or we may borrow popcorn, we may borrow cheese. We call each other and we ask for each other's help. My husband is Madre Hill. He's the former Razorback who was named an SEC legend in 2015. And this fall, he'll be inducted to the University of Arkansas Hall of Honor. He played for the Browns, the Chargers, and went to the Super Bowl with the Raiders in 2003. Madre and I have lived in 6 states, 11 cities, and Europe. And after all of that, we've moved back to Arkansas because it is home. When we were looking at houses, our realtor said that Kevin McReynolds, the baseball star from Arkansas, had lived in our home and he had built it. Knowing this gave Madre and I great comfort that this house was private. All professional athletes care about their privacy. My husband has been well known since Pee Wee football. There was a Madre Hill rule that said he could not score more than 4 touchdowns in a game. Our realtor said that this house was going to have quiet office space behind it. And we were like, sold. This is a beautiful home. We love it. We're going to move here with our 4 children who are 4, 6, 9, and 12 years old. The baby girl is 4. This apartment is going to have 21 windows facing my backyard. I have a pool back there. My children play in that pool and they have on swimsuits. I don't even want to sit here and think about my daughter being in that pool with her swimsuit on back there. It may not look like it to y'all, but back in the day, I won pageants, I did swimsuit competitions, and my daughter looks just like me, and I don't want her out there with 75 to 80-year-old men looking at her. This apartment complex is not what we were told we were going to have in our backyards. I also want to make it very plain to you that this is 2017. This is not just people looking. This could be YouTube videos. This could be pictures. This could be all kinds of things because of my husband's notoriety of us living at Witchery Court. I want y'all to look at this. This is the quiet office space around Tim Dater's office. This is what he told Beth McReynolds was going to be built behind Witchery Court. If you look at this, this looks nothing like the 4,000 cars he just said were going to be put back and forth on the office complex. That's what he just said. I think I count maybe about 5 or 6. I stood there for taking pictures during the daytime for over an hour. And that is Tim Dater's office right there. See the picture? Now, the next picture, look. I have no idea who that angry-looking woman is in the front row. I don't know her, don't know anything about her. She was at a meeting on March the 1st where the Chenal residents were told that we paid $495,000 in POA dues and Deltic only paid $260,000 in POA dues, yet we have no power whatsoever. In the 5-person governing board of Chenal, only 2 people live in Chenal, and of those 5 people, there are 4 that work for Deltic Timber. And then we were told if every resident in Chenal voted for a new board member, that person still wouldn't be on the board. Deltic Timber has only sold 2 commercial properties since the end of 2014. So here we are. They want to sell some property. Enter luxury resorts. And let me tell you, you can look at the back few pages of luxury resorts. And I have gone to all 28 national locations and screenshotted the map. This is not a luxury resort. They're sitting here telling you this, but it is simply not true. It is what they have told us down here in Arkansas because they think because we talk slower, we are slower. This is not a luxury resort. Excuse me. When you look at all these pictures, they're across the street from grocery stores, other apartments complexes, a Sears, a car wash, gas stations, oil lubes, a Popeye's Chicken, and there's one across the street from Sacred Heart Tattoo and Social Club. I printed all locations out here so you can have a really good look at it. And if you keep looking, there's also a picture in here of a traffic jam in front of the Parkway Village on Chenal Parkway. I went back there the next day and I took more pictures. And as I was going there, standing there, a man named David, who was a security guard, came up waving his arms at me. And I thought it was because he thought I was a security risk. As it turns out, he was trying to protect me because he said there are 75 to 80-year-old people here who are accidents waiting to happen. He said that I could quote him that someone is going to get hit if you put somewhere like this across the street from a children's playground, which is where they're trying to put this facility. National statistics show that fatal crashes increase at the age of 75 and rise sharply after age 80. 28% of those deaths are occupants of the other vehicles, bicyclists, and pedestrians. I walked many neighborhoods getting petitions signed. There's a large apartment complex in Chenal that is 347 feet from the Bayonne neighborhood. Apparently, dynamite is used in the construction sites this large, and people on Bayonne received foundation damage, One neighbor had an actual spring that popped up in their backyard, and they had water damage to their home. And there are all sorts of things that they tell me on horror stories on what happened and how they wish they'd never have allowed it to go in their neighborhood. While in Margot neighborhood, I talked to a lady named Wanda Nealing. She owns a home on Happy Valley that ran beside a 100-year floodplain like we did. And what she said was that the floodplain moved after a retaining wall was put in near her home, causing damage to her property and her insurance to be canceled. And there was absolutely nothing she could do about it. So I want you all to think about it. Right now at this point, I'm sure y'all have thought that we were some people wanting y'all to cater to us, but it's Deltic who wants you to cater to them in selling this property to someone who is not appropriate for this neighborhood. I've done a lot more research. If you have any questions, I can answer it, but I'm telling you right now, this is a high-density place that should not be in a low-density area. Please do not allow this to do them to do this to our children.
Thank you, Mrs. Hill.
Okay.
The next card I have is from Elijah Boland.
All right. I have more handouts. I'm sorry. But this is going to help me make the case. When do you think I'm going to read this? I'm sorry? When do you think I'm going to read this? I'm not asking you to read all of this. We're going to go through it page by page, and I promise I'm going to go for 6 minutes here. So my name is Elijah.
If you'd wait till you get to the microphone, please.
Yes. All right, so my name is Elijah Boland.
Was this handed out to everyone over the weekend?
It was.
All right.
There's an addition, but I'm just using this as my springboard for what I'm going to talk about. So I'm Elijah Boland. I'm a pediatric cardiologist at Arkansas Children's Hospital. My wife is a PA. I tell you this because we're not lawyers. We assembled this information without the help of a lawyer, and we have not employed a lawyer to review this information. We oppose the rezoning of Tract 75. It is not intended to be zoned O2 without restrictions. The following is a review of this land's historical facts. So first page up here that you all have in front of you. In 2010, Ordinance 20296 was established. I've highlighted where the zoning prior to the ordinance is spelled out. It was R2, O2, and OS. Flip the page over, and in the same ordinance, my wife and I have colored in the zoning map. Purple is O2, yellow is R2, and the green that you see is open space that is around the corner of our house, and we're at that very corner house in there, up there in Witchery Court. This 2010 POD proposed 14 1- to 2-story quiet office buildings on approximately 1.5 acre lots. This is very similar in scale to the surrounding neighborhood, consisting of 1- to 2-story homes on approximately ½ acre lots. The O2 zoning and office type development was allowed to overtake the R2 that was in that ordinance because of the low intensity use proposed in the POD. 3 years passed, and by 2013, the plans for the POD had not been executed. In 2014, my wife and I bought our house and asked the city a simple question: what could happen to the land next to our house? If you look at the next page, we were told, and this is the page from Dana Carney, we were told that by the city that Tract 75 was zoned quiet office, and I've highlighted that quiet office for you. In retrospect, this is somewhat misleading considering that, number one, the POD had expired, and number two, the term quiet office is used in the municipal code for O1 zoning, which has never been applied for Tract 75. My goal here is not to impugn our city workers who have a difficult and complex job, as I have learned. What concerns me is the widespread and I think erroneous belief that because the POD has expired, it is no longer germane to the argument about this land. In fact, the POD is what allowed the underlying O2 zoning to take over all of Tract 75 in the first place. If the expired POD were to be revoked, Tract 75 reverts to R2 and O2, a fact which has been confirmed by Mr. Bazinski and the staff in an email several days ago. It was not agreed in the 2010 agreement that any legal use of O2 would be appropriate. I think it's important to bring up the history of Tract 14 for comparison, and I'm going to make it a little aside here. Please stick with me. Tract 14 sits directly across from Champenois from Tract 75. And if you flip a couple pages forward, this is in the color maps. It's that C1 right there across from our the purple O2. It was discussed by you all in the May 9th agenda meeting last Tuesday in regards to this current issue. Tract 14 was used as an example of high-intensity uses of land in close proximity to Tract 75, thus making the case that other high-intensity uses of Tract 75 could be appropriate. I dispute that assertion. It was not mentioned in the agenda meeting that Tract 14 has a veneer of C1 zoning such that its most intense uses, including multifamily dwellings, have been stripped. Those stricken uses from the May 2008 Planning Commission minutes are in the back of your packet. Also, the single-family homes adjacent to Tract 14, that's in Bascom's neighborhood and that's westward, are buffered by a community park and pool. If multi-family housing is not appropriate for neighborhoods further west within C1 zoning and with a buffering by a park and pool, then how is a high-density apartment complex compatible only 150 feet from the homes on our street? By leaving out key details but including others, the owner of Tract 75 has effectively threatened to build a 120-foot tall hospital or other structures proposed, like a proposed complex could go on this site. Next to that, a 3-story high-density apartment covering all 7.9 acres appears to be a good alternative. This reasoning is flawed, however, as it, number one, does not take into account the relationship of the expired POD to the O2 zoning. Number two, does not consider the 6% setbacks in O2 zoning. 3, does not consider the required 1-foot setback on each side of every foot of building higher than 45 feet in O2 zoning. And 4, neglects the floodway in this area. My wife and I distributed these packets over the weekend to you all, and Director Hines was kind enough to subsequently ask Mr. Bazinski to review this information. So in an email that I received today, Mr. Bazinski states that, quote, it appears the R2 in question was due to a mapping error when the zoning maps were converted from paper to digital format. What? I can't accept that. That's, you'll forgive me if I'm incredulous. If we can't trust the current zoning maps, then everything else we're doing here is a sham. At the very least, we should refer to land use maps if there's a question about the zoning map's accuracy. The current land use map, which we see up here in front of us, these colored pictures, has a large swath of yellow residential near Witchery Court and a small corner of suburban office at the very eastern edge. In conclusion, this land was intended to strike a balance between 2 zonings, R2 and O2. The current proposal for the high-density apartment complex does not strike this balance. Rather, it considers only the legal limits of an O2 zoning borrowed from an expired POD. Little Rock should not settle for this ratcheted zoning that ignores the city's original intent. Deltic Timber has done a great job developing our city. Please ask them to finish strong, both in making a profit for themselves, but also in creating a better Little Rock. Thanks for your time. It's a privilege to work with you all in this great city under your direction.
Thank you, Mr. Boland. The next card I have is from Kyla Acock.
My name is Kyla Acock. My husband and I are parents of 3 boys who are 8, 6, and 2 years old. We live at 3 Witchery Court, and the proposed high-rise apartment complex will be right behind our house. Because I'm a mom, I'm worried about my precious boys' safety and privacy. I also worry about the other 18 children, the majority of which are 12 and under, who live on our street. I care about my home, but our children are the main reason I stand before you today, opposed to rezoning Tract 75. The Planning Commission agreed with us, and we ask you to affirm their decision. Before our home purchase 10 months ago, we checked with a Deltic Timber realtor at Chenal Properties and viewed the Chenal Master Plan, which is right here on the Chenal website, the Chenal Properties website. It's clearly marked as office on here. We were told by the Chenal Properties realtor that this land was zoned for quiet office space. Chenal Properties is part of Deltic Timber. Only 7 months after we bought our property, we learned of Deltic's plan to rezone this same land to add a large, high-density 3-story apartment complex with 130 families living in it and 165 parking spaces, which was conveniently left out of how far this is from our homes by the previous presentation. So close behind our house. We never would have bought our home had we known that a 3-story apartment complex towering over our house could be built behind us, with 130 residents, their visitors, and employees having a direct view into our home 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, through the floor-to-ceiling windows that are on the back of our house. These same residents, visitors, and employees could walk mere feet from their residence through a wooded path at night into our backyard and home. This is certainly not what we bargained for when we bought our home. All of the Witchery Court houses that back up to Tract 75 were bought within the last 2.5 years, since the POD expired, and homeowners relied upon representations from the city and or Deltic in making decisions to purchase our homes. What are zoning laws for if you cannot rely upon them when you purchase your home? Is that what we want the city of Little Rock to be known for? The city should protect its residents from such drastic rezoning so that residents can rely upon zoning laws when making huge decisions like purchasing homes. This weekend, as we have talked about, Mr. Bozinski from the Planning Commission verified that a very large portion of Tract 75, the portion closest to our homes, would revert back to R2 if the expired POD zoning were removed. Most of Tract 75 was zoned R2, but was changed to POD zoning, only to accommodate the low-intensity and low-density use of the planned office development that would look essentially like our homes. And this was the basis of the written agreement for Deltic to get the R2 zoning changed to POD, since they found that they did not have enough space on the R2 land to build a sufficient amount of homes for them. If this low-density POD does not materialize, then Deltic should not be able to substitute a high-intensity use on Tract 75. This is ratcheting of zoning. When somehow the zoning magically goes from SO and R2 and ratchets up to O2 POD, all of those low-intensity and density uses, to ratchet up further to high-density multifamily, or an O2 high-density. We are not asking you to change the law for us, or make an exception to the law for us. We are just asking you to follow the zoning laws and not allow abuse and hijacking of the zoning system by Deltic and other landowners through this deceptive ratcheting of zoning. The law is the law, so Deltic should be held to a low-intensity use of POD, or the zoning should revert back to R2, so they cannot manipulate the system, mislead people, and take advantage of homeowners under cover of underlying zoning laws. Today at 12:19 p.m., I was sent an email, and this is how we know that Mr. Bozinski was going to get up here and talk about the supposed underlying O2 that's in, documents that are from 1987 that no resident could ever know about. All the city maps that are shown that are accessible to the public show that the original zoning was R2. So we have never heard about this, 30 years ago zoning that was changed due to a computer error. So my point is, if our city can't get the zoning for Tract 75 straight, how can we expect its residents to decipher the zoning laws from 30-year-old papers that they find just yesterday or just today? We relied upon the R2 underlying zoning on all city maps, and a potential homeowner should be able to rely upon the only information that's available to the public. This apartment complex does not fit in the area because of a high-intensity use in the middle of a low-intensity area. So surrounding Tract 75 are single-family homes and low-density office space. Last Saturday night, at 2 medical office complexes, the St. Vincent complexes that were shown up there, it looks like it's, a hospital that's in operation 24/7. No, it's not. It's not in operation at nights and on weekends. And it's the same for every office space around there. That is the time when people are walking across the street to the Pullen Park. That is when we are home from work, home from school. And I noticed that in the traffic study, the night hours, again, even though we pointed this out at the Planning Commission, were conveniently left out because the number would be 0 for office space. 0, or close to 0, is negligible. But for a live-in facility, there are going to be cars at the times that kids are walking across the street and going to the pool. When I went to St. Vincent Way, I took pictures, and I think Jennifer had showed them. There were no cars there on Saturday night at 8 p.m. No cars, no activity. Bank of the Ozarks, no cars, no activity, no lighting. If you look at the apartment complex, the condos, they're next to Bank of the Ozarks down the street on Chenal Parkway, lit up like a Christmas tree at night. Activity at all hours. So that's the contrast between what we're looking at here. And speaking of neighborhood streets, we're talking about a Rawling Road development. I've heard that before. This is actually not a Rawling Road development. It is at the corner of Rawling and Champagnol, but Champagnol Drive is a neighborhood street that's 1 lane each way. And it has a park and pool right across the street. This is just a danger waiting to happen. The entrance and exit are right across from the pool. I don't know if I said that. And a lot of people walk and they bike down Champagnol Drive. This is, all of the neighborhoods around this area, single-family homes all the way back. And there's a ton of walking and biking traffic. Multifamily zoning is not a good transitional use of Tract 75. The property was discussed that's near Bascom Place by the pool and the park. If you notice, Dr. Bolin had passed out where the C1 had a lot of uses scratched out of it. So it's actually, if you look at it, they're all the 24/7 uses, all the high-intensity uses have been taken out in the minutes of the Planning Commission, which Deltic submitted, including a multifamily use and all of these high-intensity uses. So are you telling me that we're going to put a high-density, high-intensity, 130-family apartment complex on our small tract of land, but yet it's going to be higher intensity and density and not transitional to the C1 that's right across the street? There are no high-intensity or high-density uses in the area, so that is not a good transitional use of this tract of land. This facility does not have to be forced onto this small piece of land because there are many other Chenal properties where this could be built, which would not require any rezoning whatsoever. There are at least 6 senior living facilities that have availability right now. There are at least 2 other senior living facilities already approved by the Planning Commission, including a resort-style senior living complex on Chenal Parkway, just 3 miles away from Track 75. And this resort-style senior living complex has 200-plus units. It's bigger than this one. There are many locations along Chenal Parkway which are zoned for or could easily be rezoned for multifamily, which would be much more suitable for high-density buildings such as this. In fact, the Planning Commission asked the developer here to do just that. They asked them to find a more suitable location along Chenal Parkway, but Deltic insists upon forcing this facility onto property on which it does not fit, a square peg into a round hole. The developer stated many times during our meeting with them that they may not even purchase Tract 75. We did meet with them, and they said numerous times, we haven't even decided whether we're going to buy this property. I don't understand why they would waste the city's time and further confuse the zoning issue for Tract 75 if they haven't even decided whether they're going to buy the property. If Tract 75 is rezoned and the developer does not purchase the property, many multifamily complexes that might not be as luxurious as this could be built there.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, you're being interrupted. Yes, we do.
I'm almost done.
If,
One more speaker after me.
I've got 2 more speakers,
Okay,
but thank
2
you.
more.
If you would try to close, I think we've heard many of these same arguments from other speakers.
Okay. So Deltic did not inform the public about the possibility of a zoning change by failing to provide a sign on Tract 75 as required by the city. We found that we were the first to inform most residents in the area of this proposed zoning change. We spent much time talking to people and getting the petition signatures that I handed out. And if you look at the online petition that's in there, I believe it's at the end, it has a lot of reasons that people put why they were opposed to this. So that might be worth your review. We could never compete with a big corporation like Deltic Timber, and that is why we are counting on you, our city directors, to protect us citizens from and stop this rezoning attempt. We plead with you to protect our neighborhood and not allow use of deceptive ratcheting of zoning to scheme the system. The Planning Commission listened to us citizens and voted no to the rezoning, and we ask that you do the same. We also ask that you remove the O2 POD zoning that has expired and restore the zoning of Tract 75 to include R2. Thank you for your time and service to our city.
Thank you, Ms. Aycock. Thank you. The next card I have is from Kirk Grinwald.
Thank you. I regret to inform you that I don't have any handouts. But thank you, Director.
And if you
for the
could
opportunity to
address
speak with
some of the issues perhaps that have not been already
Yes,
brought
sir.
to our attention.
I'm not here to reiterate or waste time, but rather to voice my specific concerns, what bothers me most about this opportunity and why this does not seem to be a good fit next to our homes. Particularly how it's going to change the lifestyle of our children and what I see as a significant noise pollution and lighting pollution issue for what has been a relatively quiet a very quiet neighborhood. We've discussed how our children play there, but they also rest there, and it's the value of this home for us to rest, recuperate, and function the next day. When you have 175 residents, all senior citizens, you're going to have multiple EMT visits. You have a facility that has deliveries for meals 3 times a day and all those other businesses that will be there. Yes, I understand that it is not going to be a factory that's going to be generating noise throughout the night, but how often does it take sleep interruption to really cause a disturbance when we have professional lives where we have to perform at our best during the day? We looked into the number of EMT visits that will be there. We're talking about every other day. There are visits looking at similar facilities and including at least one visit during the nighttime hours when you'd expect people to be sleeping. There are also going to be the movers that will go in and out. Granted, that's during the day, but my particular concern is the nighttime rest and recuperation that our residents will have, and that finding that there's not an adequate transition between that busyness, and our facilities. There are multiple handy alternatives for available property around. I applaud the effort for this business. I think it's something that will be needed in our community. I just don't think this is the right place for it. There have been some efforts on behalf of Tim Daters, again, to which I applaud, to make this as compatible as possible, but even with those stipulations of lowering lighting as much as possible, the noise will not be changed. The lighting will still be much greater. And I again refer to the photo of how bright a residence is compared to a business that is essentially dormant during the night. It boils down to this. We, as a neighborhood, have certainly taken into consideration what this land may be used for in the future and debated it, and we have decided amongst ourselves we would much rather support a commercial opportunity there than this high-density living opportunity. We hope that you support us, support the decision of the Zoning Commission to keep this a quieter transition out towards Rawling Road. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Greenwald. The final card I have is from Madre Hill. Do you wish to speak? No? Yes? All right. Real quick though. Well, now, if you're going to speak, you have to come to the microphone. If not.
Okay. Well, here's the situation. There is a contract that's involved. I heard Mr. Carpenter addressed it, but here's the truth of the matter. He said that there was just a gate. I don't know anybody who just gives $25,000 for no apparent reason. I looked into this matter as quickly as I possibly could. The agreement for Track 75 was to be small office space. Now, in that agreement, there is no expiration date. Now, the law is the law, but there's still an agreement at hand between Witchery and Deltic Timber, which makes this a civic matter. Now, they can say what they want to say about Track 75, but the simple fact is that there was $25,000 exchanged to make this make that contract active. Now, you have a money trail, and then you have the actions of the contract that says it's small office space. Now, I get it. I own numerous companies in numerous states. I understand that you have to make money, and they haven't sold any land in a long period of time. But then you have to look at the whole picture. Now, they in the first meeting, I wish you guys could have heard what was said. It's totally different than what they're saying to you today. Now they're saying they're going to drop the land. Okay, well, if they say they're going to drop the land, let's look at the things that can happen because of the drop land. Okay, now you're talking about dynamiting to drop the land. Now, how does that affect homeowners? Someone has already spoken about that. Okay, now you're talking about floodplains. Now, Witchery is already next to a floodplain, so by dynamiting this, does that affect the floodplain? Well, if it does, guess what? Everybody in Witchery lose their home insurance. There's nothing we can do about it. Once someone declares that a floodplain, we cannot get insurance for our homes. And that's just point blank. It's already been done by a neighborhood, which has already been explained. So the funny thing that I see, which is the same kind of things I heard in the NFL, bait and switch. Now, the first meeting, they're saying they're doing things, but I figured them out a long time ago. They call these meetings with these nice homeowners who are concerned with their property, and then they get all the input from these people. And then they go back and switch everything up. Now, if you go back to the minutes of the first meeting and listen to what they said compared to this, it's totally different. But what makes it going to change tomorrow? They have already said that they had an agreement with us in Witchery. Now, if you can't take a man for his word, I don't know what you can do, especially when he puts it on paper. So now we have a civil matter talking about that it's going to remain a small office space. Now that they're trying to sell the land, now they're saying that it has expired. Well, the contract has not expired. There's no date on that contract that says that this was going to turn into something, another rezoning. Nothing to do with that. So I would say to you today, it's about time to be held, someone to be held accountable for their actions. Now, these small people, us, we can only do so much. We can only tell you exactly how we feel and how we've been portrayed and bamboozled. We need you guys to step up. We need a champion right now. I'm just going to be honest with you. We need a champion. We need someone that's going to say, hey, these people have invested in their homes. They have invested in their lives. Listen, there's already facilities nearby, just like the first meeting. Why can't y'all find another location? Why are you forcing this down their throat when you know that there's a contract that's still lingering, which is a civil matter, which will be handled in court? Why would you not side on the side of the people? We need a champion, and we need that champion today. Thank you.
I'm going to give the applicant a chance to respond to the cards that we've got. Mr. Spivey or anyone else on your that you have with you, do you wish to respond to any of these items?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mayor, since I made the comment to the board earlier in reaction to Director Fortson, I looked at the concept of was this contract still active? The contract expressly sought for consideration the approval or non-objection of people of Wintry Court for a specific zoning request, and it was not open-ended for any zoning requests in the future. That they performed, and they actually had some petitions with names on it indicating that they were not opposed. The obligations of Deltic were performed, but it was only limited to an ordinance that is no longer valid.
Okay, hopefully that addresses the contract issue that's been raised.
Thank you for the extra time, Mr. Mayor. I think that I suspect that the presentations on both sides tonight have raised questions in many of your minds, and certainly I think those are probably going to be answered with questions, particularly of technical matters, directed to Mr. Daters, perhaps Mr. Peters, and therefore I want to make just 2 or 3 points. Deltic Timber commenced the development of Chenal Valley as a part of the city of Little Rock over 30 years ago. Ordinance 15259, which was approved back in 1987, zoned, as Mr. Bazinski said, approximately 3,000 acres. And this became the basis for what you all have heard over the past 30 years as the Chenal Master Plan. In the years since then, representatives of Deltic Timber Corporation, including Mr. Daters and myself when our hair was dark, have from time to time appeared before the board seeking your approval for various rezonings, modifications, variances, and further adjustments to the original Chenal Valley Master Plan. To the best of my knowledge, Deltic Timber Corporation has always fulfilled its commitments to the city of Little Rock and has developed what we all know today as Chenal Valley in a responsible, forthright, and transparent manner. Deltic has always strived to make decisions and seek your approval for developments in Chenal Valley, which are in the best interest of the city and the residents of Chenal Valley. It stands to reason that Mr. Daters and I could not appear before this body tonight had Deltic not lived up to these obligations in the past. I think there is some unfortunate misunderstanding on the part of some of the neighbors. There hasn't been any ratcheting or hijacking or manipulation. Deltic also relied on the city's records, and when it filed its application for the POD back in 2010, it showed the zoning as O2. This application shows the zoning as O2. Not here to beat up on the staff, not here to beat up on the neighbors. But Deltic has fully and completely fulfilled all of its obligations with regard to Wintry Court as set forth in the 2008 agreement, and will continue to make decisions with respect to Chenal Valley which are in the best interest of all the residents and business owners. Chenal Pines will be subject to the same stringent scrutiny and development standards and the oversight of the Chenal Valley Architectural Control Committee that every home and every business and every building in Chenal Valley has been subject to for the past 30 years. It'll be enforced by the Chenal Valley POA just like those standards are enforced for all developments. And that's not going to change, hasn't changed, it's no different for this property. And on a second point, notwithstanding what you may have read in the paper, heard in the media, Deltic Timber's not building this facility, and we're not going to operate it. Deltic Timber is the owner of the property and made the application, but you've met Mr. Lewis, and he's told you that his company, which has expertise in developing these facilities, is going to do that. And so Chenal Pines Retirement Community will be in the family of companies of RLC. The proposed residential use of Tract 75 is both consistent and compatible with the adjacent residential uses. The city's own planning staff has recognized the appropriateness of this use for this location and recommended the same to the Planning Commission as well as to the City Board tonight. You've had a lot of comments from property owners tonight in opposition to this request, but I know you've also received letters from other residents who are nearby, some of whom have lived in the area for 20 years. And they've watched the whole area develop. And I think, without speaking for them, that they've told you they see this as an appropriate transitional use. I think they're also concerned that this is a far better, less intrusive use than some of the other uses which should go there as a matter of right and are subject to site plan review only. And Mr. Daters outlined that in his initial comments. I really don't want to talk about some of the suggestions that have been made here tonight. Let me just point out that there are senior citizens in every single neighborhood in Chenal. They have the same rights to emergency medical care, and the suggestion that emergency medical care is incompatible with residential use bothers me a lot. I don't know what data the speaker was talking about, but I hope, and the good news is that we have good emergency medical care, good emergency police and fire protection. Every neighborhood in Chenal, including this one, is entitled to that protection. Finally, Deltic Timber Corporation and its representatives and Mr. Lewis have strived to provide you with detailed information concerning the scope and the character of the proposed Chenal Pines Retirement Community and the expertise of RLC in providing services to an independent senior living facility. We've offered for comparative purposes, independent confirmation that the proposed use creates far less traffic on Chenal Drive and in the surrounding neighborhoods than any other type of development which could be built on Tract 75 as a matter of right in the O2 zone, which has been the underlying zoning for 30 years. We hope this information confirms that not only is the proposed use appropriate for this location, but that it's a far, far better utilization of Tract 75 than any other office or related development which might one day be built here if this proposal is not approved tonight. Deltic Timber Corporation and Resort Lifestyle Community seek your approval for the proposed Chenal Pines Retirement Community. We ask for your vote and will remain here to answer any questions you may have concerning any of the information presented tonight, in the hope that we can clarify things and perhaps clear up some of the misunderstandings and the rather broad scope of information that you've received. Now, I'm just a lawyer. I'm going to, obviously, if you have questions, I'm going to defer to Mr. Daters, perhaps Mr. Lewis, Mr. Peters. But we thank you for your time. We thank you for your consideration, and we'd appreciate your vote in favor of this tonight. Thank you.
All right, we have some directors who wish to either ask questions or comment. First off is Director Wright. You're recognized, please.
This is for Mr. Brzezinski, Mr. Moore.
Brzezinski.
Mr. Brzezinski, I'm not clear on what I'm reading in here as to why the Planning Commission voted this down. Can you express that?
Director Wright, if I may, before I answer that question, I feel I owe this board an apology for, obviously, I initially sent out some incorrect information. I didn't do the necessary homework to get to the bottom line on how this property was zoned. So again, I apologize for that because it has been a big source of confusion. And I will stand by that it's O2. That's the underlying zoning. So with that said.
Well, let me respond to that just. Tony, I've been on this board since 2007, and I have not always agreed with you, but 99.9% of the time, you get it right. So.
Obviously, this time I didn't.
I'll
so I'm
allow you that
sorry.
one. Okay. Okay, now go ahead.
Director Wright, why the Planning Commission voted that, again, it was 9 members. They heard from the applicant, they heard from the opposition, and I'll just, I'll read from the minutes. There was general discussion by the commission with several stating they felt the residents of the neighborhood bought homes thinking there would be office development, and now the current proposal, which was much different. It was stated they felt the residents made a decision to purchase a home in this neighborhood based on what they were told about how the property would develop. But then other commissioners went into the whole issue of the underlying zoning and what could potentially be developed there if the POD's revoked. So, I mean, that's the best I can do. Again,
That's all I
can't
could
for
glean.
nine-
I didn't
speak
know if
for
I was
nine.
missing something, but that's pretty much all I could glean from this. So, okay. Thank you.
Director Wyrick, you're recognized, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Tony, while you're there, I want to ask Mr. Spivey a question since he's an attorney. But under the POD, the residents talked about the ordinance and all of the items that were stripped out. Okay, the current POD is, it's not an existing POD at this time. So if it would remain a POD unless someone came in and did the changes. So my question is, the POD was stripped down and a lot of the uses were taken out, according to the document that we received today. So the uses that you gave us, such as high-rise multifamily, that wasn't in the ordinance. Some of the other things. So when you read us the information about an O2, which is the underlying zoning, you were just telling us what the law says today, correct?
The permitted uses, and Director Wyrick, that those uses that were removed from, it wasn't this property, it was the C1 and C2 property on the south side of Chapinol that they removed certain uses.
Okay, I misunderstood. Thank you for the clarification.
Can I respond?
Yes.
Excuse me. No. Director Wyrick, I alluded to this in my opening remarks. Back in 2008, part of the impetus for the rezoning of that property was that there was a pre-existing tract of 11 or 12 acres of MF24, high-density residential on the southwest corner of Champenois and Raleigh.
And that was referred to like track 14 or something? Is
Yes,
that what it was?
that's correct.
Okay, track 14.
That's correct.
So that ordinance that, that the residents gave us was for that tract across the street?
The ordinance that the Whittree residents supported pursuant to the 208 agreement was the ordinance that rezoned the MF24 to a combination of C1 and C2. Now, in all fairness, there are things you can do in C1 and C2 which are multifamily related. You know, I mean, I think this was a result of a dialogue and a conversation and back and forth. And we, being Deltic, and the people who were involved at that time, agreed to strike some of those uses. Otherwise, why do you rezone it MF24 to C1 and C2 if you can come right back in and do the same thing you could do when it was MF24? So there is there's a rationale, there's a consistency here. But the agreement in 2008 did a couple of things, one of which was to rezone the property across the street. Had nothing to do with Tract 75.
Okay.
Tract 75 was 02 then, it's 02 now. It also established the OS buffer, the 100 feet of undisturbed property between Witry and Tract 75. And it gave $25,000 to the Witry POA.
Okay.
So that was the reason. There's a little
I'm
confusion.
just trying to
Sorry.
understand what we've got here. Okay. Now, the reason I wanted to talk to you have this conversation with you, is Mr. Hill brought up a contract between Witry and Deltic. There was a $25,000 gate that was done. I know Mr. Carpenter says the contracts doesn't exist anymore, but what did you all promise Witry?
Well, that's the crux of this. And not to pick on Mr. Hill, he didn't live over there at the time, wasn't involved in this. May be a little confused about what was addressed. That agreement was what I just described to you.
It had nothing to do with Tract 75.
Had absolutely nothing, doesn't mention Tract 75, doesn't mention uses on Tract 75. Now, I don't want to be clever, but it's a little bit of a bootstrap to say that because we worked with them to rezone the property across the street, C1 and C2, that now that's why you can't rezone this to a reasonable PRD. It doesn't wash. There's a non sequitur there.
Okay, so basically the contract then was to work with Tract 14 and to provide a $25,000 gate for Wintry Court.
And to establish the OS buffer.
The 100
100
foot
feet
buffer.
of undisturbed
Buffer.
buffer. That's correct. Those were the three things. The pedestrian tables weren't even addressed in the agreement. That was something that Deltic agreed to do, working with the residents in the city, to design the two pedestrian tables, which they did, and it wasn't even covered in the agreement. That was extra.
So if that's what was in the contract, then all of that's been done.
It has been done. It's been fully
Done.
performed. And in fairness, the Witry people fully performed their part in that they supported the rezoning. That was all they were asked to do, and that was the only agreement with respect to that agreement.
Okay. So when Mr. Hill was talking about a civil matter in the contract, then all of the items have been fulfilled with the neighborhood and with Deltic Timber from that particular
In
contract?
my opinion, that is correct.
In your opinion? Okay.
I don't know what's in Mr. Hill's mind, and I don't want to try and put words in his mouth. I don't know. But that was the agreement, and that's the contract that existed.
And that's the only contract?
Only one I'm aware of.
Okay. Okay. I have a motor vehicle use question. Probably the.
Good, somebody
Peters?
else. Okay, I'll get out
Mr.
of the way.
Peters. We always have to have Mr. Peters come up and talk to us. In the traffic study, and I don't know what chart that was on, that you all put up, but I remember it was 478 cars, 478 trips per day.
Yes, on a daily basis for
daily
this
basis.
development.
Okay.
We estimate 478 vehicle trips per day, and that is less than 1/2 of any of the other alternate uses that we looked at, which Mr. Daters showed you graphics of that could be configured on this Tract 75.
And I believe from the testimony that 50% of the people of these 165 or 175 residents, 50% of them don't drive.
That's what Mr. Lewis said, yes.
What Mr. Lewis said. Okay. So when you came up with the 472, did you also factor in the relatives and friends and visitors that come into this residential development? Or was that based on strictly the car usage from the internal residents?
We did include all vehicle trip types. That would be employees coming and going on a daily basis, residents that might be driving still and going to different places and back, visitors and all of that. And that is documented in the data source that we used and typically do, the Institute of Transportation Engineers trip generation data. Now, as Mr. Spivey had indicated in his opening remarks, traffic counts at existing facilities that the owner or the developer owns and has monitored agreed very closely with what we calculated. And that's not surprising because the empirical data that comprised the source of data that I used is based on like facilities. Other facilities, not only the ones they own, but others that operate in a similar way.
Well, I got kind of concerned when I saw the pictures for Parkway Village and the number of cars that were lined up to get in there. What would be the difference in Parkway Village and this facility?
I can't answer that.
I can, Ernie. It's the number of residents that live in Parkway Village and the overall size and scope of that development.
Okay, so it's a larger development.
By a factor of 10, probably, in terms of population and size.
It's 10 times more. Okay, all right. So in the 478, you factored in trips in and out by the residents, and you also factored in relatives, family members, friends
employees.
coming to visit that 50% that don't drive.
Yes, yes.
And then also possibly transportation for them to go different places, that kind of thing.
Yes.
So it was included. I expected a small number, but then when I saw Parkway Village and the traffic stacked up there,
I'm not familiar with Parkway
I
Village,
was
but
a little bit concerned.
I appreciate Mr. Dater's comments relative to the size of it.
Mr. Peters, if you pull that microphone closer to you, please.
Yes.
Okay. And then the fact that, I think one of the statements was that 80% of the people that move into that would move into that location would live within Chenal already. Okay. I think that's all the questions I have for right now. Thank you.
Okay, I have other directors who wish to ask questions. I've had a request for a recess for a short period of time. What's the will of the body?
That's fine.
Probably 10 minutes is probably more realistic. Is there a motion to recess?
So moved. Second.
There's a motion and a second to recess for 10 minutes. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. All right, we'll be in recess for 10 minutes, and then we'll be back. Thank you. Okay, we are back in session. And Director Wyrick, I think you were finished. Is that correct?
I gotta be consistent.
I think so.
I think you are.
I think I'm done.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Director Fortson, you're next, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Daters, either I didn't write it in my notes or your slides weren't numbered, but can you get to the slide, Mr. Carter, that showed the line of sight elevations?
It's the next slide, going the other way, Scott.
Yeah.
One more, right there.
That one
Yes,
right
sir.
there. Explain that to me again. I want to make sure I understand exactly what this is telling me.
I'll back you up one, Scott, if you go back one, I'm sorry.
Put the microphone in front of your mouth, would you?
Scott, if you
please?
move, okay. If you see on this drawing, the line labeled AA, which is the cross-section line, running across the site. It goes from the residence in Witry, across the green space, and then into the building itself.
Okay, move to the next slide.
The next slide. This represents what that cross-section looks like. In other words, if you cut the site like that, basically from west to east, and look at it in a profile or an elevation view, you can see the distances spaced out along the bottom axis, and then the heights are coming up from a datum or a level elevation. You see the 60-foot tall trees in the middle, and this is at a true scale. In other words, 100 feet horizontally is also 100 feet vertically. In other words, we haven't exaggerated the scales or anything. And so what you see is that the trees in the open space between the residences on Witry and the proposed senior community that we're looking at, the trees are taller than the buildings in both developments.
And that area, the fine print, that's 100 feet?
That's 101, let me get my glasses up where they work. 105 is from their backyard or from their house to the open space, then 180 feet across the open space, and then 77 feet across the proposed PRD.
Is that right? I was misreading it. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Daters, before you sit down, I think on the proposed building on the lower left-hand corner, is that a elevation number 502?
That's on the lower right-hand corner. That's correct. That's the
And the one on the existing residence, is that 515?
That's correct.
So there's a 10-foot difference in elevation?
That's correct. And we pulled these off of the pages information that picks this up from LiDAR. That's how we can pick out the elevation of the trees. The LiDAR returns the top elevation of trees, and then it shoots on down and gives you the actual ground elevations.
Mr. Fortson, did you have any other
No,
questions?
that's all.
Director Hines, you're recognized, please.
Thank you. I got a couple questions for Tony. I'll try to keep this brief. Tony? I know. We got to get our use out of you before you retire. So Tony, there's been a lot of debate, drastic rezoning, not compatible use. But in a transitional use, what are the uses that you guys look at? I know y'all are supporting this, but in multifamily is a residential use, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So what do you guys consider in transitional uses other than multifamily?
Director Hines, I guess the transition from what to what?
In this area, you guys are supporting this, so, I'm just trying to, and it seems to fit a development pattern we've seen around the city. Is this property similar to the Chenal Lofts that we approved several months ago down on East on Chenal?
Yes, they're existing residential neighborhood to the east of that development, and I think in the greater Chenal area, there are developments, multifamily developments that back up to single-family neighborhoods.
Okay.
And
Is it similar to is this plan similar as far as backing up to a neighborhood to the development that the Planning Commission just approved further west on Chenal?
in terms of the type of
It was an
development,
age-restricted
it's
development.
age-restricted, it has more units. I'm not sure, I don't remember the exact specifics in terms of the buffering and things like that, but it is age-restricted.
All right, that's all the questions I had, thanks. You know, one of the things we have to consider, I'm done, Tony, thanks.
Tony, don't go away.
You know, I've talked to several of the neighbors in Wintry, and I agree with you. It's hard to make a decision based on some erroneous information that was on the city's website, and I want to apologize for staff. That's something that looks like happened in a transition from paper to digital. You know, when I look at this, and one of the things we have to do when we're deciding these matters is, one of the things I've always tried to do is be consistent. And several months ago, we approved multifamily development on a piece of O2 that was not age restricted. It was a much higher density, I think 20, if I do my math right, it was about 22 units per acre. This development's about 16, and there was only a minimum 35-foot undisturbed buffer on that from the houses that back up to it. It was called the Wood Creek neighborhood. So looking at what we're doing as far as a development pattern, I'm going to try to be consistent in my decisions on these things. So that's all I have. Thanks.
Tony, I have one question for you, please. Would you define for us what high-density multifamily is in terms of the number of units per acre?
High density is 12 units or over 12 units.
Over 12 units?
Yes, sir.
And how many units is this in terms of the acreage?
It works out to approximately 16 units per acre.
Okay, thank you. All right, that's all the questions that I have, or anyone else. So we can now go ahead and move to a vote. Let me just make sure everybody understands. A vote yes or a vote aye is in favor of the rezoning. A vote nay is against the rezoning. Okay? All in favor of the residential rezoning of this property indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. I believe the ayes have it, but there's a roll call requested.
Director Adcock? Director Hendricks? Director Richardson? Director Peck? Director Hines? Director Wright? Yes. Director Wyrick? Yes. Director Campuris? Director Fortson? Aye. Vice Mayor Webb? That'd be 7-3.
By a vote of 7-3, the ordinance is passed. Thank you all very much for your time and attention and the deliberations that we've had before us tonight. Thank you, Monterey. Thank you, Doctor. Okay, we can now move on to citizen communication. I've got, is Caitlin Avant here?
Mayor, she left.
All right.
I was supposed to take it out.
Reverend Benny Johnson.
Mayor Soloway, Mayor Webb, rest of the city board. I thought it was a departmental policy against a police officer in a uniform supporting any kind of campaign. Yes, I saw Chief Buckner on a brochure with a big police hat on supporting this. Now, if it had been any other police officer, they would have been disciplined. And I wish Bruce was here. This is showing that Bruce is allowing this man to do anything and everything that he wants to do. In fact, some officers within the department has contacted me and told me that he's saying that he do what he want to do because Bruce Moore allows him to do what he wants to do. I think that's sad. Also, I'm holding a letter right here. I don't know if a lot of you are aware of it. There's some serious allegations that's going on in this police department when one of our police chief refused to take a drug test, said he was too busy, and then take it to 3 weeks later, And also that the person on that police department name is not on that list. This is some serious allegation. And at the end, it says citizens need to demand more answers for this. And I'm one of those citizens that are demanding answers for this. This chief came here with baggage anyway. He was sued in Louisville, Kentucky, when one of his subordinates against retaliation against him. He won a substantial amount of money in a lawsuit against Kitten Buckner. But yes, Bruce Moore, he brought him here. Now, the Black Police Officer Association has been to Bruce Moore. The Arkansas Stop the Violence Movement has been to Bruce Moore. The Racial and Cultural Diversity has talked about this man, rude, discourteous, and condescending behavior. And also the state president of the NAACP was here a couple of weeks ago. Now this man needs to be investigated by the action that he's doing. He's also dogging out some of the black supervisors in that department, and this needs to be investigated. In my years as Arkansas Stop the Violence, when I founded this movement, out of all the police chiefs, you had Louis Cardell, you had Lawrence Johnson, you had Stuart Thomas. This chief is the only chief. Now, I'm supposed to be an ally to this department, and we have press conference when people die. And it's the only chief that refused to send a police officer there. Now, Chief Finks, who always called me back, after I spoke to this board meeting a couple of weeks ago, when the young lady lost her life, Tamala Jones, we asked him to send a representative from the police department, and to this day, Chief Finks has not called me back. I'm very disappointed in that when a person want to be an ally to this community. Also, on last week, on Facebook, a big fight happened on Asher Avenue. It supposed to been directed patrol there, but yet the administration pulled that from there. Now, I'm going to tell you, this is a racially divided city because a black group is allowed to hang out on Colonel Glenn, but when they go down to by the river in Reservoir Park, where there's predominantly whites, they're not allowed to hang out. This is a racially divided city. This is a racially divided board. And I want to tell Director Hendricks, I love you dearly, and Director Ken Richardson, I love you dearly. But this majority white board votes totally against any ordinance that y'all put together. And I want to tell you, keep your head up, because the same God is the God of grace, is the same God of wrath. And the Bible said, touch not mine anointed, do my prophet no harm. And I'm going to tell you, when the wrath of God come down, he said, you make your enemies your footstool. That's in the book. God bless you. God keep you is my prayer.
Thank you, Reverend Johnson. The next card is from Tony Davila.
How you doing, Mayor?
Good evening.
Sorry, I was in the hospital for kidney stone and I was kind of messed up. Anyway, Youth Advisory Board, we're still back again, and we gave some copies out to what we're going to do. This is the last time I'm going to come ask you guys to help with the program. Next step I do is to get all you guys elected out of office if we don't get something going before next month. And it's the truth. All my energy trying to help my kids is going to go into trying to get everybody out of here that ain't going to go along with the program. Now, that's not a threat. It's just telling you the truth, because like Michelle Obama says, now you know what it feels like to not have hope. And my kids don't have hope. 2 more people got found dead in my neighborhood. 2 girls got found over here off Chico. The other day, they shot another Hispanic down there on Stanton. I mean, what does it take? Does it take for the gangs to go to Chenal Valley and start killing some of them poor kids up there? That you guys are next. Your kids are next. They're going to target your kids because they're going to find out our kids ain't got no money, so they're going to go with the kids that have the money. We got to stop this stuff before it happens. We got to get a hold of this. We could work together. I mean, you might have problems with zoning, this and that, but, all together we can work together. That's the only way we're going to get here. I can't fight you guys and expect to get a program going, because it ain't never going to happen. It's only going to happen if we all work together. We got projects going on. Some of these kids that went for the jobs, they had 650 kids are going to get jobs. 1,250 supposed to apply for that. What's going to happen? Only half our kids are going to get service this year? I mean, you got 65 openings in the police department. Take that money and put these kids to work. All right. We had 3 deaths. We create jobs. You got carpenters. You go around, look at all these people building buildings. Who are they? All aliens from Mexico building all these carpentry. Why haven't we taught our black kids and our white kids and the little kids here how to do that? Why do we have to bring them from somewhere else? Yards. You know, we can get these kids to do yards. We could fund a couple of projects, you know, give them their trucks and do that, give them lawnmowers. We can get these kids to clean up places. We can get these kids to learn things, moving companies. We even got a project where we help the police department. We get these kids to operate drones. We got drones that we're going to put around the city. Our kids will be doing that for you guys. Okay, these empty lots that we got a lot of empty lots all over the place. We like to put little soccer fields in the little basketball things, you know, things that we could use these lots for, there's nothing happening. We're doing our education. We want education. We want our kids to get GEDs and diplomas at the same time. Okay, them guys with them.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. DeVilla.
Am I out? Man, you gave them guys all that time for
Hopefully you
to
will,
fight for the house.
hopefully you will visit with Dana Doucette in our community programs about your program. I think you know her. I think you've met her. If you would, please. Thank you.
I'll see you next election, man.
Jane Rampona. Jane Rampona. Patrick Nayland.
Good evening. Yeah, you told me to come back in a month from the 18th of last month. Told me to come back with a timetable for renovation of a residence located at 5121 West 33rd Street.
Yes, sir.
And I have it right here. You
What-
didn't say
what-
anything.
Have you visited with our staff about this?
Which staff?
Our city staff, our housing staff.
Oh, no. He was already here and
Pardon?
he was here when we did that, when he was back in the.
I know, I believe Mr. Jones isn't, wasn't Mr. Nennan supposed to come back and report?
Report to staff.
Do you have any report from, have you contacted the staff or not?
Like for housing?
Well, about the, I think you were supposed to have a procedure for the renovation of this property, right?
A timetable.
A timetable.
Yeah.
And have you given that to any of our staff?
No.
All right. If you give it to Mr. Jones, and he will have staff follow up with you.
Okay.
And we may have you back, depending on whether or not the staff believes you've complied with the request. Okay? Clark Gray.
Staff. I come to you today to propose, I have been homeless for some time in Little Rock. And I know there was a lot of problems with the homeless panhandling. There was a big issue brought up about it, the property owners, the business owners. I come to you today to propose that if there was maybe some temporary jobs where the homeless could earn a little bit of extra money to buy food, water, maybe going to Walmart to buy a warm jacket or a warm blanket or something that if they're not able to get to, like myself, I'm disabled and I've got a blood clot in my left leg. And there's a lot of times that I'm not able to go get food. Oh, my apologies. And this is my first time, so I'm sorry. I'm not able to get food or warm blankets or anything. I was just proposing that, possibly that the city of Little Rock could offer, maybe small jobs that we might be able to do to earn a little bit of money to where we can buy food. I know the, places where people sleep, is an issue too, which I'll bring that up another time, but, my main concern is, you know, I'm speaking for myself and for the homeless people, as a voice. Trying to get, maybe jobs for the homeless where they might be able to, have money in their pocket where they can buy food and stuff like that.
Thank you, Mr. Gray. Have you been out to Jericho Way, the
Yes,
City's Day
several-
Resource Center?
Yes, several times.
Are you
but-
getting some case management out there?
No, but I'm gonna go out there tomorrow and talk to,
Go out there and
the
talk to Miss
case-
Mandy about it.
Yes.
And she'll certainly assist you specifically, but then as you suggest, certainly the city's interested in trying to do what we can to help the homeless in a variety of ways, and whether day labor is something that we can handle or not, we'll ask our staff to consider that.
Well, I appreciate the staff. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Vicki Hatter? Vicki Hatter. Okay. And I don't see Dr. Anika Whitfield. Dr. Anika Whitfield. No? Okay. Thank you. Okay, that concludes our citizen communication. Well, Director Wright's first. Director Wright, did you have a comment or a question?
I think I forgot what it was.
All right, well, I'll call on you when
Yeah.
you remember it. Director Hendricks?
Yes, I listened attentively to what Benny said about the sheriff. What do we do about that? Maybe it's something we discuss among ourselves, but I want Benny to know if they don't, I will.
I got the letter here, could I get copies to everyone? This is a serious allegation.
Okay, that's what I want to share with the board.
Well, if you have anything written, Reverend Johnson, if you'll provide it to us so we can have a copy of it. All right, very
What
good.
is that, Ben, that you have a letter for us or just comments from the conversation that you had with us?
The letter about these allegations within the police department.
Who wrote that?
I don't know exactly where it came from, but it's been surfacing around.
Oh, okay. At least I got some action up here. Otherwise, you would have been just sitting here and walked out the door, okay?
Now, some police officers, especially black police officers, have a concern about this administrator.
Okay, we're not supposed to talk away from the mic. We'll take care of it. Thank you.
All right, we were, I mentioned last week, Director Adcock has a comment or a question, but I mentioned last week that we were going to try and get Tom Carpenter's review done this evening. So, is everybody prepared to go into executive session for that purpose? There's a motion and a second to go into executive session. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. We're in executive session and we'll return shortly. Before we leave, Director Adcock, do you?
It's been sitting out here, and I just wanted to make sure that they wasn't wanting to talk to us. Ms. Robertson.
I guess they're
was there.
okay.
Okay.
All right. Having returned from an executive session to discuss the review of our city attorney. We had asked Mr. Carpenter earlier to address 2 or 3 issues that we had questions about, and we have visited with him, and he has provided us with that updated information. So thank you very much, Mr. Carpenter. And let me recognize Director Richardson for a motion.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to make a motion to give Tom a standard raise, make it retroactive. Standard raise.
To January 1st, yes.
Yes, sir.
It's 1.5%.
Yes, sir.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. That motion's approved. And there was a further motion to be made.
Yes, sir. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to increase Tom's travel allowance from $40 a month to $600 a month.
Is there a second? Second. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. That will be approved as well. Thank you.
I think probably.
Is there anything else to come before us tonight? If
Move to
not,
go home.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed, say nay. Or an adjournment. Thank you.
Well, probably.